This week on QDL, we talk with Lisa Ryan, Chief Appreciation Strategist with Grategy, about dealing with problem employees. Is there even really such a thing as a problem employee? Well, find out when we come back. Welcome back to Quality Digest Live. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest. All right, the disruptor, the grump, the Debbie Downer, the Cranky Charlie. You know who I'm talking about. Every company has or has had or will have anyway, employees that are, let's say, hard to deal with. Sometimes they're hard for coworkers to deal with, or maybe they're hard for managers to deal with, or maybe they're hard for everybody to deal with. We sometimes label these people as problem employees. So how do you deal with them? Well, here once again to talk to us about employee-related topics is Lisa Ryan, Chief Appreciation Strategist with Grategy, and an award-winning speaker who works with organizations to keep their top talent from becoming someone else's top talent. Well, once again, Lisa, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
All right, it's great to be back with you.
Okay, well, let's start with even the term problem employee. Is there really such a thing as a problem employee?
Absolutely. And there's different reasons why that happened, but a couple episodes we talked about the Gallup poll and how 30% of employees are actively engaged, 50% are moderately engaged, and then you have that bottom 20% of the negative, toxic, horrible people who work for you. We want to see what we can do as far as salvaging them, not only from a standpoint that we don't, turnover is expensive, but from a legal standpoint, we also want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can before firing that employee. But when it comes down to the point that you have done every single thing that you possibly can to work with that employee, to get them back on the bus, to try to help them, and they are just not having any of it because of whatever's going on with their life, you as a manager have to make that decision. Because I ask my audiences all the time, when that horrible toxic person starts causing people to leave, who leaves? Your best employees or your worst employees? And it's always the best employees. So that bottom 20% of the actively disengaged, they cost you about $3,400 for every $10,000 you're paying them in compensation. So sometimes you just got to cut the cord.
So you're saying, if I hear you right, that the toxic employee, did you say the toxic employee can cause good employees to leave? Is that?
Yeah. When you think about it, when you go to work and let me put it this way. Think about if you have your rock star employee and then you have your problem child, and you have a big assignment, a big project coming up, and you have to decide between those two people who you're going to give it to. Obviously, you're going to give it to the rock star. So how are you rewarding your best employees? You're giving them more work. Where this negative, toxic person who may be making the same amount of money is doing half the work, or because the manager doesn't want to put up with their nasty attitude, or I don't feel like dealing with you. And this person, this rock star, is saying, hey, I'm working my tail off here. I'm making the same amount of money as Joe Slacker over there. I'm out of here. I'm going to go to a company who actually recognizes good work, and they get rid of the people who aren't doing the work.
So is it important, I guess, to understand the root cause of why this toxic employee is the way they are? In other words, is it just who they are? I mean, some people are just psychopaths. Or is it their environment? In other words, is it important to understand, well, maybe they are just really unhappy with the job that they're having to do at this company, or maybe they're really unhappy with their coworkers, or maybe they're unhappy with their manager. Is it important to understand first why this person is the way they are?
Yes. And that is having those conversations with them. One of the things that I recommend in my book is the stay interview. Now, we've all heard about exit interviews, but sometimes that's a little bit too late. That employee's already out the door. But what if you sat down with that employee and said, what do you like about your job? I don't like nothing about my job. Okay, you're here for 40 hours a week. There's got to be something that you like about it. Tell me one thing you like about your job. Well, this is okay. So you start that. And then, where do you see yourself going? What would cause you to leave the company? And so you start to have these conversations. Now, I was working with one client who did this. He had 3 different plants, and he decided to do stay interviews with all of his employees. And he tells the story that the first round, they didn't trust him, and he didn't get a whole lot of feedback. But when he sat down with the employees, he found out a little bit about them, what they were looking for, where they wanted to go, where they saw themselves, what would cause them to leave. And he started taking action on the things that he learned. And the employees are like, wow, he's actually listening to us. This is actually working. The second round, they were a little bit more open. The third time he did it, because he was doing it about every 6 months, they became more open. So sometimes when you can have those conversations and find out, with this toxic employee, is it a temporary situation that they're having some problems at home, their kids are in trouble with drugs, there's stuff that they have going on at home, and now they're bringing that into the workplace. So it's a temporary situation, or is this something that maybe it was just a bad hire? Maybe this person was not a good fit for your organization. So having those conversations, and again, doing everything that you possibly can before taking action to get rid of that employee, but having the conversations and finding out what's going on and how can I help you?
Well, I think a lot of employers would just go, that's just a lot of work. And just, this person's just hard to get along with. Just fire them. So is it worthwhile to invest in a, quote, problem employee? Is it worthwhile doing that deep dive, trying to understand, who they are and where they're coming from, so that maybe you can turn them around? Is there value in that, or is it just better and cheaper just to cut the cord?
It really depends on the situation, but in most cases, from strictly a legal standpoint, you want to make sure that you've done everything that you can to help that person. Because if they are that toxic employee and you come in one day and just fire them, they are going to make up reasons as to why that actually happened, because you never bothered to have a conversation with them. They didn't know what they were doing wrong, and now, of course, because we live in such a litigious society, right. They're going to go on YouTube and listen to some lawyer's commercial that says, have you been wrongly fired? We can take that case. So it becomes much more expensive if you have a wrongful termination suit filed against you. So from a human connection standpoint, and maybe this person's coworkers know that she's going through a difficult time right now, but you don't. And now you just come in and fire her, and the rest of them are walking on eggshells. They don't know, am I going to be next? Right. My boss is having a bad day. Is he going to come in and fire me? So the more that you can, and is it a lot of work for some people? Yes, it is. Is it worth it? In most cases, yes, it is.
It's interesting. I've heard, and I don't know that this is true, but maybe you do, is that even when you're starting to probe as to why, why somebody, might be cranky all the time or toxic, that aren't there certain legal minefields you can't delve, well, do you have, are you going through some emotional problems, or there's some family problem? I mean, don't you have to kind of come sideways at that legally almost?
Right. Well, you cannot, from an Americans with Disability Act, you cannot have any questions that would suggest any type of health issues. So the question to ask is, how can I help you do your job?
Okay, sure.
Period.
And leave it up to them to...
Yeah, you're not filling in the blanks for them.
Okay, that's good advice. So it's more giving them the opportunity to express themselves as to why they're unhappy or whatever, and giving them ample opportunity to share with you and open up if they want to by very open-ended questions, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people are just wired. I mean, when it comes to happiness research, 50% of our personality, we are wired for negativism or optimism or negativity, okay? Or pessimism, I should say, or as the pessimists like to say, realism. So some people are just wired that they have to work harder to be happy. So maybe there's just a personality disconnect, that if you used a personality assessment tool like DISC or something like that, so you could also see how people are wired. Because the person who is directly opposite you on the DISC scale, which is extrovert, introvert, people-oriented, and task-oriented, basically, are the 4 categories. But if someone who is wired completely opposite than you don't understand what makes them tick, you don't get along with them because of it, and now you fire them, where it could have been something that spending the time, making the investment in some kind of assessment tool could also lead to better communication, so that you get what you need from your employees because you understand how they're wired.
Well, I want to end this on a positive note. So, I mean, your whole obviously the name of your company is Grategy. So your whole thing is focusing on the positive, gratitude. Understanding where your employees come from, building them up. So I want to end this on a positive note and just let you talk a little bit about how you build an environment or a culture that maybe helps, douse some of the flames of toxicity that might not that's there but might not be there if you had a better culture.
It's really paying attention to the good that the employees are doing. So you have that problem child, but because you're so focused on the negative that person is doing, that's all they're ever hearing from you. What if, and you're not comparing, Joe Slacker to anybody else, you're comparing him to him. So now you're starting to notice a difference. He really rocked it out on one part of the project. You know what, Joe, you did a great job on that. This is specifically what I saw you do. You were here on time. You got along with your colleagues, whatever it was. But you're looking for ways to recognize that person. And you may be the first manager in that person's career that found something good about him. And he's going to be like, that felt pretty good. Yeah. How do I get some more of that? And now you've given him the tools that he needs, because what gets recognized is what gets results. So if you are constantly harping on the negative, you know what? You're going to get more of it. But if you find it in yourself to look at all of your employees and find them specifically the good things that they are doing. I know a couple episodes ago, we talked about that Marshall-Lasada ratio with the 6-to-1 positivity. That's a lot of positivity, but the closer that you can get to being specific, to catch your employees in the act of doing things well and to recognize them for the good that they do, that is one way to turn around that problem employee.
Yeah, and specificity, I think, is something that you've touched on a lot in your book, Manufacturing Engagement. By the, if I didn't mention this before, this is a book that you normally you give away at your conferences, but you do have a PDF that people can download of the book, and I'll include the emails underneath the player page down there, and you can email Lisa. It's 98 just very simple and specific, I should say, 98 very simple and specific things that you do for your employees to help engender that engagement that we've talked about, right? And I think the major part of that, and the thing that keeps sticking with me when talking to you, is specificity. Is not just kind of a blanket, oh, you're all doing so good, but no, here's the specific thing that you did that was good. This is why I appreciate it. So that I think you said before is when you do that, that employee knows that you've been paying attention to them specifically.
Absolutely. And it's treating individuals as individuals, building those relationships with people as individuals, and looking for the good that they do specifically and in comparison to themselves and their own and the work that they've done for you.
All right. Well, Lisa Ryan, Chief Appreciation Strategist with Grategy, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Here we go.
You're very welcome.
And I'm sure we're going to have, I think this is the third time you've been on. I think we're probably going to have you, well, we've got 98 more things to talk about, 95 more things to talk about. So keep your eyes open in your email if you want to hear more from Lisa. And that is it for today's show. And as usual, if there is someone or some topic or some piece of tech gear you want us to bring on the show, just let us know by sending those ideas to QDL@qualitydigest.com, and I'll do my best to see what I can do to bring them on the show. And that is it for today. We will see you next week on QDL. So long.